April 19th, 1995. Pittsburgh. A 270-pound man walks into a bank in broad daylight, pulls out a gun and robs it. No mask, no disguise. He smiles directly at the security cameras. Then he walks down the street and robs another bank. Same thing, big grin for the cameras. By 11 p.m. that night, his face is all over the local news. Police knock on his door just after midnight. When they arrest him and show him the surveillance footage, McArthur Wheeler is genuinely shocked, confused, almost angry. "But I wore the juice," he says. The juice. Lemon juice. Wheeler had covered his face in lemon juice because he believed, truly, deeply believed, that it would make him invisible to cameras. His logic? Lemon juice is used as invisible ink. Therefore, lemon juice on skin equals invisibility. He'd even tested it beforehand with a Polaroid camera. The photo came out blank. Proof. The photo was probably just bad film or a broken camera, but Wheeler saw what he wanted to see. When Cornell psychologist David Dunning read about this story in 1996, something clicked. He thought, if Wheeler was too incompetent to be a bank robber, maybe he was also too incompetent to know that he was too incompetent to be a bank robber. His incompetence protected him from recognizing his own incompetence. Welcome to Briefly Science, where today we're exploring one of the most fascinating and uncomfortable truths about the human brain. The less you know about something, the more confident you become. And before you think, "Oh, that's other people," let me stop you right there. This applies to you, to me, to literally everyone. We're all walking around utterly confident about things we know almost nothing about. Let's talk about why. David Dunning and his grad student Dunning-Kruger decided to test whether Wheeler's story represented something universal about human psychology. So in 1999, they designed a series of experiments. They gave undergraduate students tests on logic, grammar, and humor. After completing each test, students were asked two questions. How many questions do you think you got right? And, compared to other students, how do you think you performed? Then, Dunning and Kruger compared their self-assessments to their actual scores. And what they found was stunning. Students who scored in the bottom quartile, around the 12th percentile, estimated that they'd performed at the 62nd percentile. They thought they did better than 2/3 of other students when they'd actually done worse than 88% of them. These weren't stupid people. These were Cornell students, smart, educated individuals. But in this specific domain, they were incompetent, and they had absolutely no idea. The students who scored in the top quartile also misjudged themselves, but in the opposite direction. They underestimated their performance. Not by much, but they genuinely thought they'd done worse than they actually had. This pattern showed up again and again across different tests, different skills, different contexts. Dunning and Kruger had discovered something fundamental about human self-assessment. They called it, well, you know what they called it. But here's what's really happening in your brain when the Dunning-Kruger effect strikes. It all comes down to something called metacognition. Metacognition is your brain's ability to think about thinking. It's your capacity to step back, observe your own thoughts and performance, and accurately judge how well you're doing. And here's the cruel twist. The same skills you need to be good at something are the exact same skills you need to recognize whether you're good at it. Let me explain. To judge whether you're competent at logical reasoning, you need logical reasoning skills. To assess whether you're a good driver, you need to understand what good driving looks like. To evaluate whether your joke is funny, you need a sense of humor. See the problem? If you lack a skill, you also lack the ability to recognize that you lack it. You're missing the very tool you'd need to measure your own incompetence. Neuroscience studies have identified specific brain regions involved in this. Your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, self-reflection, and behavioral regulation, is supposed to monitor your performance and catch your errors. But when you're incompetent in a domain, this region shows less activity during self-assessment. Your brain literally isn't turning on the error detection machinery. You're flying blind, but you don't realize you don't have instruments. This is what researchers call the dual burden, or double curse, of incompetence. Burden 1, you're bad at the thing. Burden 2, you're too bad at the thing to realize you're bad at it. Your incompetence robs you of the ability to recognize your incompetence, so you remain supremely, blissfully confident. Think about McArthur Wheeler again. He didn't just fail to rob banks effectively, he failed to recognize that covering your face in lemon juice is a terrible disguise strategy. He lacked both criminal competence and the metacognitive ability to evaluate his own criminal competence. The lemon juice stung his eyes so badly he could barely see, and he still didn't think, maybe this is a bad plan. Now, the popular version of the Dunning-Kruger Effect, the one you've probably seen on social media, shows a graph with something called Mount Stupid. It suggests that people with a tiny bit of knowledge are maximally confident. Then their confidence crashes as they learn more before gradually climbing again. That's not quite what the research shows. The actual data is more nuanced. Low performers are overconfident, yes, but they're still less confident than high performers. It's just that the gap between their confidence and their actual ability is enormous. High performers are slightly underconfident, but only slightly. They're much closer to accurate self-assessment. The Mount Stupid curve is a nice metaphor for how learning feels. That moment when you realize how much you don't know, but it's not backed by the original data. What is backed by data? The fact that incompetent people dramatically overestimate themselves across virtually every domain studied. Grammar? Check. Logical reasoning? Check. Medical knowledge? Check. Driving ability? Absolutely. Studies show 93% of American drivers rate themselves as above average, which is mathematically impossible. Emotional intelligence? You bet. Even firearms safety. Researchers went to a gun range and quizzed gun hobbyists about gun safety. The people who scored worst on the knowledge test were the most confident they knew what they were doing. Think about that. The people least equipped to handle dangerous weapons were the most certain of their expertise. Here's where it gets really uncomfortable. You're probably experiencing the Dunning-Kruger effect right now about something. Maybe it's politics, maybe it's nutrition, maybe it's parenting or investing or how to fix your car or whether vaccines work. There's some domain where you have strong opinions based on minimal actual knowledge. And the scariest part? You can't tell which one it is, because the effect prevents you from recognizing it. That's the paradox. If you're on Mount Stupid, you don't know you're on Mount Stupid. The view from up there is beautiful. You feel smart, competent, informed. Everyone else seems confused or misinformed. If they just listened to you, everything would be clear. But you're not on a mountain. You're in a crater of ignorance, convinced you're at a peak. So what about the flip side? Why do experts underestimate themselves? This is sometimes called imposter syndrome, though it's more accurately described as the curse of expertise. When you're genuinely good at something, you've spent enough time in that domain to see its complexity. You know how much there is to know. You're aware of the gaps in your knowledge because you have enough knowledge to see where the gaps are. Also, when you're an expert, things that are difficult for others feel easy to you. So you assume they must be easy for everyone. You underestimate how hard the skill is to acquire because you've already acquired it. Dunning-Kruger found that top performers in their studies assumed that if the test was easy for them, it must have been easy for everyone. They couldn't imagine how badly others had performed. Meanwhile, the bottom performers assumed that if they found it difficult, everyone must have found it difficult, so their poor performance must be average. Both groups used themselves as the reference point, but experts had actual data to update their beliefs. Novices didn't even know what they didn't know. This has real consequences, serious ones. In medicine, incompetent doctors are less likely to seek second opinions or additional training. They're confident in diagnoses that are wrong. In business, CEOs with superficial knowledge of a field make overly confident decisions that waste millions. In politics, well, do we even need to go there? People with the least understanding of complex policy issues often have the strongest, most inflexible opinions. And the most dangerous part? The Dunning-Kruger effect makes people resistant to learning. If you're unaware that you're incompetent, why would you try to improve? Why would you seek feedback? Why would you question your assumptions? You're doing great. At least, that's what your broken metacognition is telling you. So here's the critical question. How do you escape this trap? First, understand that nobody is immune. The Dunning-Kruger effect isn't about stupid people. It's about everyone in domains where they lack expertise. You might be a brilliant physicist, but utterly incompetent at understanding nutrition, or a talented musician who knows nothing about economics. Second, cultivate intellectual humility. Ask yourself, what would I need to know to be wrong about this? If you can't think of anything, you're probably overconfident. Third, seek feedback from people who actually know the domain. Not from other novices who will reinforce your misconceptions, but from genuine experts. And when they tell you you're wrong, resist the urge to dismiss them. Fourth, test your knowledge. The students in Dunning and Kruger's studies became more accurate at self-assessment after they received training in the skill. Once they learned what good performance looked like, they could recognize that they hadn't been performing well. Fifth, pay attention to how much you're learning. If you're diving deep into a topic and finding it more complex than you initially thought, that's a good sign. It means your metacognition is waking up. You're seeing the gaps. If, on the other hand, you read one article and feel like you now understand a complex issue, that's a red flag. Real expertise makes you more aware of complexity, not less. And finally, be suspicious of certainty. Charles Darwin said, "Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge." Bertrand Russell observed, "The trouble with the world is that the foolish are cocksure while the intelligent are full of doubt." If you feel absolutely certain about something, especially something complicated, check yourself. Genuine experts express uncertainty. They use words like probably, it depends, in most cases, based on current evidence. Absolute certainty is usually a sign you haven't thought deeply enough. Here's the paradox that makes the Dunning-Kruger effect so hard to talk about. Explaining it to people often backfires. When you tell someone about the Dunning-Kruger effect, they nod along, thinking, yes, this explains why everyone else is so confidently wrong about things. They don't think it applies to them, because, again, if it applied to them, they wouldn't be able to recognize it. So you can't really weaponize this concept against others. You can only use it as a mirror for yourself. Next time you feel supremely confident about something, pause. Ask yourself, do I actually have expertise here? Or do I just have opinions? Have I studied this deeply? Or did I skim a few headlines? Am I McArthur Wheeler, smiling at the camera with lemon juice dripping into my eyes, absolutely certain that I'm invisible? The truth is, we're all McArthur Wheeler sometimes. We all walk into metaphorical banks thinking our metaphorical lemon juice will make us metaphorically invisible. We're all overconfident about something. The difference between wisdom and foolishness isn't never being wrong. It's being willing to update your beliefs when you discover you are. McArthur Wheeler went to prison still convinced lemon juice should have worked. Don't be like Wheeler. Be willing to descend from Mount Stupid. The valley might be uncomfortable. That moment when you realize you don't know as much as you thought is genuinely painful, but it's the only path toward actual competence. And here's the beautiful thing. Once you develop genuine expertise in something, you get better at recognizing it. Your metacognition improves. Your self-assessment becomes more accurate. You stop being quite so confident about things you don't understand, and you start being appropriately confident about things you do. That's the real journey. From unconscious incompetence, where you don't know what you don't know, to conscious incompetence, where you realize how much you don't know, to conscious competence, where you know things and you know that you know them. And finally, maybe, to unconscious competence, where skills become second nature. But the first step, the hardest step, is admitting you might be standing on Mount Stupid right now. If this made you question something you were certain about, that's good. That means your metacognition is working. Subscribe to Briefly Science for more explorations of how your brain tricks you into thinking you're smarter than you are. And next time someone seems irrationally overconfident about something they clearly don't understand, remember, they're not stupid. They're just human, just like you, just like all of us, confidently robbing banks with lemon juice on our faces, wondering why the cameras can still see us. The first step to wisdom is recognizing you might be the one wearing the juice.